What is karma? Karma is a biological process in our anatomy and physiology. There are many myths about karma, so the first thing is to clear a few things up. Karma is not about cosmic judgment, and it's not about punishment. These myths have grown up in spiritual philosophies and religions for thousands of years. And as so often, there are grains of truth behind these myths, but the reality is much more complex. We would like to present you with the idea of biological karma. That is, karma that evolved millions of years ago in early animals as a way of retaining emotional memory over subsequent generations without the need for biological reproduction. Of course, we're talking about reincarnation here. Now, we've done another video on reincarnation, and there'll be lots more of that coming because we're starting a research project soon with a prominent university to find scientific evidence for reincarnation. So, karma is actually the transport system for this emotional memory. For example, if an animal felt fear in a dangerous situation, that fear would get burned deep into the animal's brain memory, but it would also get burned deeply into its karmic memory, which is stored in the outer layers of the energy body, which is one of our magnetic energy frameworks. That memory stayed with the animal's soul as it reincarnated into the next generation, and so it retained that emotional memory of the fear. That is a survival technique for the species. That animal will now have an inherent fear of that particular dangerous situation. For example, a gazelle knows instinctively to run away from a cheetah. In fact, this theory could quite easily explain animal instincts, which as yet do not have a satisfactory explanation. Also, it can explain how phobias exist as well. For example, arachnophobia. Now, karma is integral to the emotional cycle. You can think of the emotional cycle as having two components, in its most basic terms, thoughts and emotions. A thought pattern hits us, and if it's a negative one, an emotion then starts in the body. And then that kicks off more of the thinking. And then around we go in this spiraling cycle of negativity. That cycle can last a couple of minutes sometimes, or it can be reoccurring and last a whole lifetime. Imagine a family feud or a long-standing argument between people, or even between groups of people, or religions or nations. This can be very damaging to our health. So next, this emotional cycle can be expanded. First, we have a trigger that kicks off a thinking pattern in the mind. And then that activates the production of emotional energy. That circulates around the energy body until it finds the right chakra that it was produced for, and it activates it. That emotion regulating chakra then activates the emotional response in the material body that we feel consciously as a fizzing reaction in the body somewhere. So where does karma fit in? Well, we can expand the cycle further and see that there is a fuel to the cycle. That fuel is what we call karma emotion. That is the emotional memory we were talking about earlier. So as there's a fuel, we can now call the cycle the karma emotion engine cycle. So this karma emotion gets burnt in the emotional reaction. In fact, it is what produces the emotional reaction in the first place. Specialized organs in a magnetic energy framework that we call the lower mind processes the karma emotion and then produces the corresponding emotional energy, which activates the emotional response. So we can say that whenever we're feeling an emotion, it is because we are burning karma emotion. Now that applies to positive or negative emotions, which means there are positive and negative karma emotions. So now we know how and why we feel emotions. It's due to our past karmas. So how do we produce karma? Well, that happens in the lower mind as well. Karma emotions are produced when we think. So as we're thinking about a trigger, we're producing karma emotion. So for example, if we're constantly worrying about things, we're producing anxiety in our bodies. But we're also fueling up for our future anxiety. That's why it's so important to be aware of our mind stream and take full control over it through meditation techniques. Let me know if you want me to go over the karma emotion engine in more detail in another video. If you think about it, this really does fit with karma mythology. Karma is commonly thought of as cause and effect, and that's exactly what this is. When we think, we produce karma, and we burn it at a later date in emotional reactions. And negative karma is often thought of as producing suffering. Well, what is suffering? It's negative thoughts and emotions, isn't it? So there are different types of karma, not only positive karmas and negative karmas, but there are what we call basic karmas, such as fear and desire and pleasure or anger and hate. These are basic because they evolved first, way back when emotions first started to evolve in small animals. They are the most basic emotions for an animal's survival. These karmas get activated purely by thinking about the trigger. As animals evolved over millions of years, they started to live in social groups. When this happened, emotions started to evolve into more sophisticated forms of karma. This is where intent karmas evolved. Intent karma is a mechanism to allow animals to live in large social groups together and get along and work as a cohesive unit. This is where the myths of judgment and punishment came along. These karmas are things like guilt and shame and fear of judgment. And these karmas are activated by an intention process in the mind. It's all about what you intend to do. You could also call these types of karmas moral karmas. Now you can see in our human history that morality is an evolving process. It changes over time. It's not fixed. That's because karma is produced in the mind and its severity is allocated by the subconscious conditioning patterns in the brain. And an individual's subconscious conditioning patterns are usually linked to the collective conditioning patterns of a functioning society. So severity of karma can change over time with changing conditioning patterns. The severity we're talking about here is the weight of karma. It can be heavy, medium, or light. It's actually a spectrum though, so it's not really that clearly defined. But when analysing our own karma, it's easy to think of it like that. If you train yourself to see karma in the energy body, you'll see the weight as different colours. Positive karmas are different shades of red, and negative karmas are black, browns, and greys. If anyone's interested, we're actually starting a research project on this soon. And we think that karma processing organs are in the lower mind overlay to the thalamus in the brain. Now let's talk about karma in terms of the overview of life in the universe. Karma has evolved on this planet as part of the journey of life and the journey of awareness. And the ultimate goal of the universe is self-realization. That is the purpose of everything that you see around you. That is the realization of our true self, the universe becoming aware of itself through conscious beings inside the universe. That's you. Karma is there as a mechanism to lead us towards that goal. First of all, emotions evolved, which gave life the ability to consciously feel the difference between positive and negative. Then, as life continued to evolve, the negative karma emotion caused suffering to appear. That suffering is the trigger that leads to awakening. So the journey of reincarnation is the journey of the growing self-awareness of the universe, growing lesson learning for the soul, but very importantly, a journey of learning how to stop producing negative karma and removing whatever karma we currently have. The reason is because it's impossible to go through the self-realization process without first reducing karma levels down to a very small amount. The reason has to do with Kundalini. Kundalini is the physiological side of self-realization and cannot awaken until the karma has been removed. Once it's been removed and we go through Kundalini awakening and start the journey of self-realization, then we're released from any more incarnations. We've broken the cycle and we're free to live in infinite peace. And we do this because the source becomes self-aware through us. In fact, who we thought we were completely disappears and something else emerges. But that is another story. See you soon.